Ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to the Spiral Arrow podcast. My name is Charles, also known as 4 Years Wasted, and I will definitely be the host of this month, the February of 2018 Spiral Arrow podcast. This will be a solo performance. This will be my love letter to you. A little bit of some personal time between me and you. When was the last time we even had this moment 1v1, me and you? And you know what the nice thing is? Some people say I don't really care, but a few days before Valentine's Day, I thought this could be my time to spend some intimate time with you while we discuss a few matters that deal with gamers, gaming, the industry within the third world countries. So welcome. I hope I've said my piece. And to be honest with you, I hope that this particular episode is going to touch upon a topic that maybe is a bit misunderstood. I've had a few friends in different countries asking me different questions, and you can see that people don't really understand the situation that I'm currently in. For example, if you look back at the channel activity from about 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, I used to upload regularly. Like I said, I was in university, and internet in Ukraine is very good, very fast. It's a utility that's available to everyone. So the internet was not a problem for me at the time, hence why I was able to create content. Then I moved back home to Zimbabwe and things changed. Uploads declined to almost non-existent, and people thought that maybe I was the one who didn't want to produce content anymore. But that's not the case, and that is the segment that will lead to the discussion of this particular topic of the second Spiral Arrow podcast, and that is internet access, the issues of net neutrality within the third world country. I'm going to be using Zimbabwe as a case study because I live here. I no better situation than to describe due to various factors. But before we get to the nitty-gritty, I just want to come up with, let's just say, 2 disclaimers. First of all, for my personal safety and for the people I know and live with, I won't name any names. I won't be direct on some topics just due to the fact that I have to stay safe. I do not want to start a conflict with people in higher seated powers than me. Let's just say freedom of speech is not so free. So please forgive me for not getting specific with details. I can't, I don't want to. I won't do this for my safety, and of course I won't do this for the respect of other people who wouldn't want me to say certain things. So I will be general about the discussion of internet in Zimbabwe as an example of how internet can be a struggle within the third world country. And to be honest with you, it could be the reason why there aren't many content creators that are known internationally amongst the social media of the world, due to the fact that the internet is such a problem within Africa, and I'm sure other third world countries that are struggling as well across the entire world. That will be my first disclaimer. The second disclaimer would have to be me just coming outright up front saying that I am not a professional within this topic, and if I misunderstand certain concepts, of course feel free to correct me within the comment section below of this particular podcast video. And of course, as always, this podcast does not have any graphical content. It's just meant for you to listen to during your day-to-day tasks. So feel free to minimize the tab, continue with what you're doing, and listening to my words. It's gonna be an interesting topic, I believe. So let me start with the first topic of the day. This may sound like a rhetorical question. It's not. But I just have to stress the need of this particular episode. First of all, someone, a friend of mine was once asking, he plays Street Fighter 5. Just an example. He was inviting me to play some games with him, and my reply was that I can't play with you, not because I don't want to, But because of the fact that I wasn't at the arcade at the time, at the arcade by the cold room, there is a good enough connection for us to play online Street Fighter V Arcade Edition with our friends who are currently situated in South Africa. And then he said, surely don't you have some mobile internet provider who could help you, maybe even if you don't have ADSL or fiber at home, maybe have some mobile subscriber that you can use to connect with me. I was like, we do. We do. But with the way things are currently situated, it might not work. He didn't believe me. We tried. The connection was 1 bar out of 5. He left. I explained to him the various situations, which I will get into in this podcast, that limit our access to playing games online with him. And initially he just thought that we were being unfair, not wanting to play with him. He didn't really understand that we just couldn't play with him even if we wanted to, because his background and his internet environment within South Africa is much more different than Zimbabwe. He thought that internet worked the way it works for him. Sadly, it does not. So that brings up this first topic. What does internet have to do with gaming, have to do with the gaming community at all? How does it affect us in any way? It's just the internet. I know this may be a rhetorical question. Most people already know the answer for this, but I'm not gonna make the assumption that we are all in agreement with that particular question. I would like to believe that there are some people who are not really affected by the internet. Maybe there are gamers out there or content creators out there who really don't strive or don't have a need for the internet to get their content across or to enjoy playing video games. And my explanation to this would be, imagine a situation whereby, if I were to look around personally around where I live, you'll find that there are a lot of kids, not even kids, there are a lot of gamers. Let me stay away from the stereotype that most gamers are kids. There are lots of gamers that you'll see moving around. Maybe they themselves don't have the equipment to game, so they rely upon the arcade environment that's currently there. Pay and play the games that you need to play. They can enjoy offline gameplay together as friends each time they meet up at the arcade. In that particular environment, the internet really isn't a factor. They provide competition for themselves, they provide entertainment for themselves, and they play games mostly offline. Things such as patches, patch notes, updates, digital copies of games is not really a factor within that particular social environment that they bring about for themselves. They've got physical copies of games, they're provided by the arcade, and the environment is there. All you just have to do is pay for the certain amount of time. The disc is provided, you play with your friends, you go home, that's that. Most people survive, they urge their gaming needs through that particular thing on its own. No need for internet, just a little bit of money, and you can get to playing with your friends, and you can build a community of gamers offline entirely. There are some people then who go as far as become content creators, for example. So most people, you see their videos online, YouTube, wherever else you may be, their own personal websites. But then that may not be the case for everyone. You might have situations whereby people produce certain things, whether it be videos about games, whether it be commentary about certain things, whether it be podcasts. It can be anything really related to what they love within the gaming community, and they just distribute it amongst each other. People have flash drives, people have hard drives. There's no real need for internet if you have a close-knit gaming community that you need to provide content for. You just need a physical form of delivery, and some people do that. At the cold room, before we started uploading our videos, we genuinely used to make content and deliver it flash by flash or even by disc. So people got the word out that we existed just through a few videos that we had made. Even before the cold room was a thing, there were still a couple of videos guys were throwing around, combo videos, tech videos, some matchups between some of the top level players at the time playing MKX. So in that regard, internet wasn't needed. But in this situation, we're looking at the need for internet. Games are no longer the same as they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Most games back then could fit on a disk, which was less than a gig. At most, during the days of DX10 and Windows Vista, if we're talking about PC games, if a game was considered to be extremely large, we're talking about 5 to 8 gigabytes of data. Considering the fact that broadband and ADSL was now a thing in the modern world, not so much in the third world. The distribution of games wasn't really a problem at the time, but this is now 2018. If you notice on the channel, there should be a Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite tournament. The game itself is a 60 gig download, which is a ridiculous amount of data in the third world country. The updates for most of these games, Street Fighter, MVC, you find that the update is 13 gigs, 15 gigs, or even 18 gigs, which literally is the size of a whole game. If you look at the download for PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, that's literally a 14 gig download. So Street Fighter 5 Edition, Arcade Edition update, just an update for Street Fighter 5 was more than downloading a whole game, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So in this modern day and age, video games are much larger. You can find that a 2 terabyte can be filled up very easily with just a couple games. So internet for gamers now is a must. Before we even consider playing games online, getting the games requires a very fast broadband connection, whether it be ADSL, whether it be fiber. It has to be unlimited, and it definitely has to be quick, because most of these games are on the upwards of 30, 40, 50 or even 60 gigs of data requirement per game, and you're not going to play just one game. So it's really a problem. So with that out the way, you have to now consider, okay, I definitely like playing games online, so I'm going to have to need a stable internet connection. This connection has to be fast enough to get reliable ping within the closest server that you want to play on, and there shouldn't be any packet loss. You don't want to be disconnecting mid-match. That should never be a problem. And then on top of that, you need internet to communicate with your friends that you've made on all these online communities. So as a gamer, I can't stress the fact, I can't stress anymore why internet is now an integral part of this particular community, this situation that we find ourselves in. My elder brother, he doesn't really care much. He just wants his indie games, he just wants his story-based driven games, and he wants to just get in there and enjoy himself during his free time. For him, multiplayer online communities, big updates and patch notes, they don't interest him. He just cares about the game. So people like that still do exist, but I believe they make up the minority of the current situation that is the gaming community. So internet cannot be stressed anymore. But then the problem then comes, is internet available in your country in a way that is affordable to the people of the country? In Zimbabwe's case, no. In Zimbabwe's case, no. The internet that's there it's available. You can get some blisteringly fast internet, at least by African standards. But the problem is there are many other factors that you have to account for, considering the factors in an economic crisis. The country's been down for decades, and so far things haven't gotten better. So now moving into the next topics, we're just going to talk about a few things that make this so. Why is internet within the third world? Maybe you can then take what I've said and then weigh it against your country. Are you facing the same issues? Are you not facing the same issues? Then maybe within the comments below we can discuss possible solutions or possible causes for our problems. But definitely, like I've said in this previous topic, internet's a must for gamers. We need it. And I will talk about the pricing of data here in Zim and why it's crazy. But first of all, last year, at the end of 2017, there was a budget breakdown for the entire country. Apparently, I won't say who said, for my safety, I won't say who said, but it was stated that the budget for 2017 for the entirety of Zimbabwe was $4 billion US. That was the national budget of 2017. Due to the sources that I got, that was the figure. Whether it's accurate or not, to be honest with you, it's just pure speculation. This could have been not the correct figure of last year's budget. Who knows? But that's the budget that I got from my sources. And then within this budget of $4 billion, we had 800 million going towards education. We had 364 million going towards the Home Affairs Department. We had 340 million going towards the Defense Forces Department. We had 208 million going towards the Department of Health. And we had 244 million going towards agriculture. Now, if you do the math, which I'm not good at, but if you do the math, you can see that's $1.956 billion that has been used of that $4 billion budget, leaving behind $2.044 billion left for all other expenses that the country had to face within 2017, whether that would have been repairs to certain things, reconstruction of certain buildings, reconstruction of certain infrastructure that the country needs and can't live without, and anything else that wasn't stated within the 5 departments that they initially stated had to be all put within that $2 billion. And if you compare that to the economy of the first world countries and transitional countries, $2 billion isn't much money. There are some rich businessmen whose net worth is already more than our country's budget for the entire year. So can you really develop a country with $2 billion worth of budget for everything else? And to be honest with you, I would factor this as a problem as to why the internet infrastructure isn't as good as it could be. There's just not enough money going around. There are reasons for that. I will not state. I will not say why. I don't want to be prosecuted for anything, but I'll just say that there could be some viable reasons, very viable reasons, as to why there was only $2 billion left behind in the budget for all other expenses that the country needed to face. And to be honest with you, it's just not enough money. Zimbabwe is a small country, the population is small, but 2 billion is even smaller for an entire country. So it's a really, really tough situation, ladies and gentlemen. It's really tough. And as a gamer, to be honest with you, like we had spoken about in the previous podcast, gaming isn't really, it's not looked upon in the positive light. People believe that gaming, it's unnecessary, it's for kids, there's nothing good that can come about it, and that's the reason why there is no gaming industry in Zimbabwe in the first place. And most countries in Africa, I believe so, is the same sentiment. People have no respect for it, and hence why it's an industry that is untapped. A very interesting statement was given by a certain newspaper, and I quote, "At the heart of the economy's fundamental economic challenges is an unsustainable budget deficit whose financing through assurance of treasury bills and recourse to the overdraft with the Reserve Bank is untenable." What my bleak understanding, or should I say my lack of knowledge, how I understand the statement is saying that we always have all these costs, all these things that need money for, all these things that need paying for that go into the national budget. But the amount of money that the country produces and its needs, the scale doesn't balance. We're always left in debt. Each year we're always left in debt, and we then tap into the Reserve Bank, and in the end, we can't sustain the budget that we set for ourselves. The treasury bills are not enough. And the way the system is managed is not the correct way of managing it. Hence why we're always in debt and we're never making enough profit as a country to finance that debt. We can't sustain it, but yet it keeps on growing. So with that in mind, let's lead you in to 5 reasons why I personally think internet is expensive in Zimbabwe, and to be honest, in most third world countries. I'll try scrutinize each one But like I said, there could be multiple factors I couldn't really think about. But first of all, I would just like to say that these are just 5 points that have been talked about. Various analysts, various businessmen, various people online in different forums as well. So I feel that there might be plausible reasons why this is so. But like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Nothing is completely true. Like they say in Assassin's Creed, nothing is true, everything is permitted. So let's get in there. 5 reasons why net is expensive in Zim. And like I said, the expense is the primary problem. You have to consider that Zimbabwe is a poor third world country. And once you start giving services such a high value that people can't afford, that's when we start having problems. But let's go. Number 1, net access is expensive in Zimbabwe. Like I said, that's the primary problem. Amongst other things, that's number 1 right there in my opinion. Net access is expensive in Zimbabwe. The cost of a consistent connection for an individual, residential or commercial use is way beyond the economic reach of most citizens. Here, I try to scrutinize this opinion for myself, but maybe you can. People just don't make enough money to justify the internet costs in this country. Let's look at some of the startup costs for most internet connections, this be ADSL or fiber, before we even consider any data packages that you'll be paying for in the coming months. If you want to get fiber dug to your house or residential area or to your business somewhere else, we're looking at upwards of a couple $100, $500, $300, maybe if you're lucky. If it's a residential place that's close to a hub, $300 and upwards. So it could even reach up to $1,000 depending on your location. That's for digging fiber. Maybe you have ADSL options where they'll tell you that routers cost anywhere around maybe $50 to $100 for different router classes and different router qualities. You might have to have an external router that you mount on your roof to get a better signal from where you're at to the ISP. So that all these different options all costing in the hundreds and upwards. So some people in different countries, some people in developed countries might just say, $100, $300, $500 or $1,000 to set up fiber. Doesn't sound like a bad price. Maybe, he just works 1 or 2 months and, he's got $1,000 saved up spare. He could use that to get his internet. But you have to consider that this is a country where we're talking about minimum wages of $58 or less. We're talking about average salaries of about $200 to $300 at best. Before we even consider setting up this internet, if I were to earn that $300 personally myself, I would have to consider bills. We're talking about water, electricity, the rates of the land I'm living on. I would need to consider transport, food, clothes, health, and medication. We'll have to consider other expenses that I might come across within my day-to-day life within that month where I got the $300. So after all those expenses have been accounted for, how much money do I have left to set up this $1,000 fiber? I might be saving up for years. Of course, I'm not saying that everyone's poor. In every class, in every situation, there's always those top class people with the top class money. But they're not the majority of people. That's the extreme minority. That's the 1% that people talk about. So for most people, setting up that fiber, setting up that ADSL, buying those routers, it might not be feasible. You'd rather make sure your family has food on the table than be quick to launch a fiber initiative in your neighborhood. So the expense is my first point. Definitely a problem. Second point now. 98% of all net connections are made via mobile. So the cost of mobile broadband is the key determinant of how big an expense the internet really is. Within the national budget, they don't actually say how much is put towards telecommunications and internet infrastructure. It's not because it can't be measured. We have a good estimate, and like we said, 98% of all connections made in Zimbabwe are through mobile devices, which means most of the big ISPs are the mobile providers, Econet, Telecel, and Net One being the big three. We can calculate how much is needed. It's just not being done. And the fact that almost 100% of connections are mobile-based connections should raise a red flag on its own. What does this say about ADSL? What does this say about fiber? It's just too expensive. It's beyond people's reach. 98% of the population. It's a ridiculously high figure. Why don't people have access to internet in their homes and their businesses? Why do we always have to rely on the cell phone? Some people might just say, well, at least I would say, if I want a SIM card, I just need to find 50 cents. That's the startup cost, 50 cents. It's better than spending $100 on some fancy router and telephone wires or fiber or ADSL routers. It's much cheaper, 50 cents. And then from there, I now have to decide how much data I require on a day-to-day. If I have no money for data, I am not pledged to buy any. I can just keep the SIM card and make some phone calls and SMSs until I have enough money to buy mobile data. So the reason why most of the connections are made via mobile, it's the cheapest option we have, which should say a lot of things about the economy. The pricing's too high. The pricing is too high. I'll probably explain a few of the reasons why the pricing is quote-unquote too high. But you have to consider that Zimbabwe's internet prices are the third highest in the entire Africa. So that is a red flag number 2. I just can't deal with it. It's too much. And as gamers, like I said, most of the gaming community in Zim are young people. And I believe if you look globally, most of the gaming community is compromised about the age group of maybe 18 to 32, 18 to 34 years are, I believe, the majority of the gaming community. If we're looking at the 18 to mid-20s, those are most people who are probably still in school, still in university, or still trying to find jobs, or they've just started up with their jobs. You know what I mean? And where exactly are we supposed to find this amount of money to finance the internet to enjoy our luxuries then? Gaming as an example, where exactly are you supposed to find these funds as a young person trying to get your life started? Even if you're in the 30s, you have to consider your family. So it's a tricky situation, and to be honest with you, as a country without subsidies, it's not going to get any better anytime soon. And moving on to the third reason why internet's so expensive, it says that even though previous hikes in tariffs were reversed, there was once a time, I believe this was one of the worst periods in Zim history, 2016, end of 2016, I believe, where the tariffs for data were increased so much that a United States dollar could only get you 5 megabytes of data. It was ridiculous. It was astronomically bad, and people made their voices heard, and it was reversed at the end of the day. But anyway, even though these hikes were reversed, we still pay 30 United States dollars for 1 month's access to 1 gig of data. Third highest in Africa, like I said. What I mean by $30 for 1 month's access of 1 gig data, usually, like I said, we use mobile data as our primary source of accessing the internet. To get a gig of data that lasts 24 hours costs you $1. After 24 hours, if you didn't use that 1 gig or you had some data left over, it expires completely. That's that, you forfeit your data, it's gone. You don't get no money back. So if you want to keep on using a gig of data each day, it's $1 a day. Month is roughly 30 days unless it's 31. That's $30 down the drain on only 1 gig of data a day. It's too much money considering the fact that when I was in Ukraine, I could get an unlimited fiber connection for the equivalent of about $12, and this was a 100 megabit connection. Here, this 1 gig of data at best will be moving at a 1 megabit connection. 1 compared to 100. $30 for 1 gig compared to $12 unlimited for the whole month. It's it's sad. It's sad. Let's even think about it this way. You have a video game update. I had a friend who was playing the new Star Wars Battlefront 2. There was an 18 gig update. That's already $18 down on one update for one game. That's it. We're not even considering anything, any other download or any other need for internet. He already has to pay $18 just for one game's update. This is excluding the fact that he needed to download the game in the first place, and that game is huge. Problems, man. problems. Let's see. There's those 3 that I stated lead into the 5 reasons now. Those 3 were the main points. Now let's go into the reasons themselves, like the actual stated reasons why we are told internet is expensive and what I've researched. Zimbabwe is a landlocked country. There are many landlocked countries in Africa and across the world. We are not the only ones. Yet our internet is some of the most expensive and least effective internet in the whole world. But anyway, Zimbabwe is a landlocked country. We have to pay certain tariffs. We have to pay certain fees to coastal countries who have access to these submarine fibers. There are certain access points within every continent because most of the data fibers travel through sea. So at the different coastal points where these submarine fibers connect to land, those countries can then charge for the service of maintenance and provision of internet. That makes sense. If I were to be an ISP provider, like a company myself, of course I would have to factor in the cost of accessing those submarine fibers through those countries into the final cost that I'll charge for the internet bundles or the data bundles that I'll be selling to my customers. That's all fair and fine, but the level of which the markup price is increased due to that here as compared to other countries, like I said, we are not the only landlocked country in the world. I don't know. You can take your 2 cents about that. Secondly, Zimbabwe has a small population, 12 million, so estimated 12 million people. There's a potential user base of 10 million, which means there are about 2 million people who probably can't use internet for various reasons. Maybe because those 2 million could be the population of babies or elderly people who are not computer literate. And then of that 10 million, it has been recorded that there's been a 50.1% penetration of the internet in Zimbabwean society. So 50% of the potential user base are using the internet, which gives about 5 million connections, active ones, that are currently happening right now. And of those 5 million connections, like we said, 98% of them are made through mobile data. So judging by that, you can then say it's really hard for ISPs to subsidize and discount their internet connections because there are just not enough people buying for them to turn a profit. The prices have to be higher for them to pay back the debt that they have from ordering these connections for the country and getting access to the internet from these coastal regions. It makes sense business-wise. But then, like I said, we have to consider the economic status of the country itself. We are in debt. Most people earn a little bit of money. If you are charging internet prices that are higher than people's salaries, how do you expect people to have access to the internet consistently? It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. I can't understand how this is possible. It's one of those we're trying to ask for a service that we can't afford. It's like someone buying an expensive car. I used to love this saying. We always used to say that don't consider buying a car if your primary concern before you even buy the car is money for fuel. So let's just say you're a businessman, you see this nice Lamborghini and you're like, man, I can afford this Lamborghini right now. This is exactly what I want. I'm really into this Lamborghini. But then you go to the dealer and be like, yo man, I really want to make a purchase on this Lamborghini, but how much fuel does it guzzle? You know, I might not have enough money for fuel. If you ever find yourself asking that question, I personally believe you can't actually afford. You may have the money to buy the car, but you can't afford having the car. You can't afford maintaining the car. So at that point, don't buy the car. So in this case, Zimbabwe bought the car. We just can't maintain it. This internet thing is clearly we can't do it. We ain't doing it right. And I mean, with unemployment that's upwards of 90%, people who are not officially employed, most people are now just self-employed, trying to do something for themselves, to make money for themselves, to survive. It's too expensive. The price is set. The third reason, the private sector is what leads in the rollout of a public utility. The internet should be faced as a utility, not as a luxury. It should be a utility like water, electricity, sewage, garbage disposal. It should be something that should be readily there. You can opt out of it, but by default you should have it. It shouldn't be something you have to seek out for and have to sacrifice an arm and a leg to get. So the private sector is the one that leads in the rollout of this public utility. State can't control the infrastructure, so any attempt to subsidize is met with pushback from the state until a certain obligation is met. So you'll find that this was actually part of the reason why back in 2016 there was that increase in pricing. Certain providers, ISPs, were trying to go for some competitive pricing that could entice more people to get online. But there was pushback from the state. Definitely, they were complaining that we can't be subsidizing your so low prices to get more customers, because you still have to pay off this debt that you have created with us for providing this internet, because the government had to go out on a limb to get access to these submarine fibers and then provide it to these different mobile and ISP companies to provide the internet cost to the people. So that debt has to be paid back. Whether it's fair or not, that's up for debate. So their argument was that no, you can't be increasing our debt by lowering your prices. Like them as companies, they'll be making and turning a profit, but they're not paying back the state and for everything what it did in terms of the infrastructure. And the fact that it can't control the infrastructure, no one can really control the internet, it's already a problem. The more people who are online, the more people start talking, the more people start communicating. It's something you can't regulate at all. So you also would want to keep tabs on that, especially in our current situation. And less people talking, the better. So there'll always be pushback, especially when it comes to subsidizing internet. Most people in power wouldn't really want to do so, to give such liberal access to the internet, because apparently it would lead to problems. I'm still yet to see those problems personally, but according to them, it does. The fourth point, late investment. This one touches my heart because I've actually lived through this, but late investment only started after 2009. Most people listening will be shocked to hear that internet only really became a thing in Zimbabwe in 2009. Before then, to have any form of connection, even if it was dial-up, it was like a privilege that only a few could afford. Internet was like, to the average citizen of Zimbabwe, internet was out of this world. Out of this world. Definitely something you couldn't think of. Definitely something you had to plan for to get. Like, we had to simply have a sit down as a family to decide, like, hey guys, outside of dial-up, people are talking about this whole broadband thing. What is broadband? People had to research what is a broadband. Is it an animal? What can it be? And plan on how to get it. So it was before 2009, internet really wasn't a thing. It was, people tried. VSAT was their kind of, broadband was their kind of, 3G was completely not a thing at all before 2009. So late investment, man. It was a problem. So it started after 2009, and this was when the multi-currency was adopted. We started using United States dollars and South African rands to fuel the economy due to the Zimbabwean dollar crashing completely. We had no economy left. A lot of work has been done since then. That I give them props. Like if we were to compare internet 10 years ago, from 2008 going backwards to what internet is now, 4G LTE, broadband connections, fiber, ADSL, VSAT connections, you have a variety of choices now. A lot of work has been done. But the management of these things and how they are subsidized or lack thereof, and how they are controlled by the powers that be in rolling these things out to the people, it's an issue, man. It's an issue. It's the reasons why these things are expensive. And also due to the fact that a lot of work has been done, a debt has been created, because we went from no internet to having internet within a space less than 10 years, like completely not having anything, to having something that, even though it's kind of trashy, in my opinion, it might not be like utter shit, but it is trashy. It is definitely internet, like what better than some countries, that I would have to say. Even though it's terrible, it's still better than most countries out there. Within a space of less than 10 years, a lot of debt has been made because people had to call in a lot of favors and borrow a lot of money that they couldn't pay back. Probably they filled in their pockets in the process too. So that debt, who's gonna pay it? Clearly, the people who introduced this are not going to pay it, because then most of them aren't even around anymore. They're now enjoying their profits. Someone has to pay that debt, and at the end of the day, the price of that debt is put into the price of the data, which is then paid by us, the citizens of the country. So internet isn't really all that good, and it's hella expensive. We're just paying for it every day, and in the end that leads people to just saying, why should I waste my money on this internet? I'll just live without. And the more people who say I'll just live without data, the less improvements there will be, because there will be no money for it, and the people who abuse the money won't go out on a limb to try and make the situation better. And finally, the fifth reason why internet's expensive is a compromised regulator. This is common knowledge. Internet is regulated by Portras within Zimbabwe. That's the only name I'll say right now as far as I'll go. Portras is mandated to protect the citizen when it comes to products and consumer base. But it also falls under the government. So it's a government facility that's supposed to protect the citizen from, in the case of internet provision and there's the products that come with it. That's already like a paradox. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but anyway, usually you'd want an individual entity that helps regulate and protect the citizen from both the providers of the internet and the government. But in this case, it's a part of the government. It's just an arm within the cog. I mean, it's just a cog within the machine. And it has to, if that's the case, you have to consider that it has to safeguard its own interests. It has to safeguard its own profits when it comes to taxation. And in the end, who is taxed? The citizen. So we, in the end, were in a difficult spot. We're at a disadvantage because the government will have to protect its own interests. It will have to make sure that it gets a return in revenue and profits and in its investments in the country. And giving us subsidies means less profits. Giving us discounts on data means less profits and returns on revenue. So it can't work. We just have to be taxed more and all taxes have to be collected. There's no discount. There's no easy way out. Internet is just freaking expensive. And it's tough, man. It's tough. I think I'll just end this segment of the podcast as to 5 reasons why the net's expensive right there. I never really went into detail as to the context of this, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the situation that we're currently in and how it applies. As gamers, fair and fine, we have no political power, should I say. We can't just walk into parliament and demand things, but we need access. We need to create our own gaming communities. We need to socialize. We need to be known. We need to be seen. We need our live streams. We need to upload our videos. How can we do that with so many issues at hand? How can we do that with connections that are way above our pay grades? It just can't work. And let me move into a small little segment before we move into the issues of net neutrality, or should I say lack thereof. In this segment, we're going to be talking about the cost versus what you actually get. This one here gets people really pissed off, but hopefully it will be something interesting for you to hear. Let's compare the standard of life to the cost of internet. We've already touched upon this. Most salaries, like I said, minimum wage can be $50 or less. Trust me, it's been less for most people. It's just never stated out loud. Under the table jobs and such things people can't afford. So like I said, I'll give an example. There is one particular unlimited data bundle that is provided by an ISP. This is ADSL, just so you know. I will not name the ISP. You can get unlimited access per month to the internet for $90 United States dollars. Bear in mind, this $90 United States dollars does not guarantee blistering fast good internet. At best, I've used this internet before. At best, you get about 300 or 400 kilobits per second. Whoever's listening right now could potentially even be laughing at just how average or very slow that internet connection is. In my eyes, it's extremely slow, coming from using a 100 megabit connection when I was still in university. You pay $90 for a 300 kilobit connection. It is not consistent. It can drop and you can get throttled. It's unstable. Sometimes it connects, sometimes it disconnects. And many of the ISPs in this country have this tendency that if there's ever a problem with the net connection, let's just say if in one month there was 1 week where there was an issue with the signal, maybe there was a system that was broken on their end and they acknowledged that their system was broken, you will not be refunded that 1 week. Your month won't expire a week later. It will expire as if it were the deadline. So you only get 3 weeks in a month. You will not be refunded any amount of money equivalent to that 1 week's worth of data at all. There is no compromise. You've lost that 1 week. That's that. We're sorry. So if I'm getting my measly $100 or $200 a month, and then I decide to sacrifice $90 of that $200, leaving me with $110 for me and my family, and then the internet cuts for half the month, do I need to say more? Do I really need to say more? It's fucking absurd. It's fucking absurd, if you ask me. Secondly, let's talk about the average cost of living for each Zimbabwean. I'm currently not well versed as to what the United Nations has drafted in terms of this particular figure, but let me just use myself as just as an example. It's not accurate at all, so don't even take it as if this is fact. Let's just say I go into town and back. That's $1 worth of transport. Maybe some people might, let's have like a worst case scenario. Some people need to catch 2 rides to get into town and 2 rides to get back. So that's $2 worth of transport money in a day. United States dollars. Let's just assume that I'm going to want to buy something for lunch. maybe something before lunch and something after lunch. Usually on average people spend $1 on that because dollar deals, man. It's the cheapest thing we got. So that's another $2 worth for food during the day if you're gonna eat twice in the day, maybe like at 11 and at 3, right? So that's $4 in total. Maybe you're gonna buy about $1 worth of airtime if you want to make a couple phone calls. $1 is about, I don't know, about 8 minutes. 8 minutes, maybe let's just say 10 minutes worth of calling is $1. So at most we've spent $5 a day on average every single day. I personally spend less than that, just so you know. $5 a day. If I am earning $200 a month, 30 days by 5 is $150 gone already. Gone completely. I'm only left with $50 to save, and of which it's not really $50 to save because like we said, we have to pay for utilities that where we live. And then you go look at the internet that's being provided. Like we were comparing the average cost of living to the cost of the internet itself. I have to have about $5 each day at least to have a normal day. And then you go tell me that a data bundle of 1 gig will cost me $2. What? So I'm supposed to sacrifice my lunches, my 2 eating sprees, should I call them, whatever. I'm supposed to sacrifice transport to go into town. I have to walk to town to get that 1 gig now. I have to walk back home to get that 1 gig now. What exactly am I supposed to sacrifice to get that data? Because I'm starved for budget. It doesn't work that way. And so if you look at the cost of these things and the speeds at which you get the internet that you get, the cost, it's too much, it's too high. You get situations where the startup cost of fiber, like I said, would be about $1,000. And then you think, oh my goodness, at least the bulk of the expenses are over. They are not, because you want the top range fiber connections per month. They're paying upwards of $180 each month. But I'm only getting $200. And the internet ain't that good. They'll tell you it goes up to 25 megabits per second. Up to. Up to doesn't mean exactly 25 megabits per second. Up to means that you could get 1, you could get 2, you could get 3 megabits per second, or you could be lucky and sometimes it actually reaches 25 megabits per second. Up to doesn't mean exactly. That's the lingo that they use to lure you in. You think, oh my goodness, there's this net connection that goes up to 50 megabits per second. It only costs $300. Up to doesn't mean exactly. And at that point, you get the internet connection, you see 6 MB. And then you hang yourself and you freaking die. It's a joke. It's a joke. To be honest with you, this topic it's pissed me off, man. It's pissed me off. We need internet most of the time. Games update almost on a daily basis. Games release on a daily basis. Digital copies need to be downloaded. Content needs to be uploaded. Content needs to be downloaded. How can we do it? We don't even have the budget for it. It's way out our means. That's why I can't sustain this channel right now. I just can't create content because you find that videos are a couple of gigs and I have to find a way to upload a couple of gigs. It's fucking ridiculous. Finally then, let's move into the final discussion, which is net neutrality. The principle of this, like I said, I ain't no professional. Don't take this with a grain of salt. I ain't no professional. The principle of this is that ISPs must treat all data on the internet the same, and no discrimination or there shouldn't be any discrimination, and they shouldn't charge differently by user, content, etc. So everything on the net is the same thing. That's the concept. Just because you went to YouTube and I went to Facebook, we shouldn't be charged differently. We shouldn't be discriminated upon which content we view or which content we choose to appreciate. But whether countries adhere to that or not, to be honest with you, is murky at best. most of the things that happen here in Zim would suggest not, and Africa as a whole hasn't really subscribed to the principles of net neutrality. Well, there's still nothing really written about it here, no real documents cited that state that certain XYZ countries are trying to push this forward. Many reasons for that. Let's see what I got here written up. No intentional blocking, slowing down, or charging specific money for websites and online content. That's the first point I cited right when talking about net neutrality. So no intentional blocking. As far as I'm concerned, Zimbabwe isn't really criminal of that as a country. We'll have situations like China or Turkey blocking Facebook completely. They want their people not to touch those websites. I haven't found a situation in Zimbabwe that blocks intentional sites. I haven't really bothered to check, but the sites I visit are not blocked. So at least in that regard, we're still safe. I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Slowing down though. Criminal. Throttling, packet shaping. We criminal, ladies and gentlemen. That happens all the time. You go pay for your unlimited data bundle in hopes to download a lot of freaking data in a month, hence why you needed an unlimited connection. But as soon as the ISPs detect that you have a lot of traffic in and out your connection, immediately speeds drop. That up to 25 megabits per second becomes up to like 25 kilobits per second. Slowing down is a factor here. Throttling happens, especially if you're visiting torrenting sites. Just so people know, torrenting isn't illegal. It's only illegal when you torrent content that's copywritten. So don't say we're criminals, man, because some people are, but most of us ain't. Here we go. And then charging specific money for specific websites and online content. We are criminal for that as well. This isn't something unique to Zimbabwe. This has been cited in many other countries. What I believe this is done to turn a profit on data, because it makes people buy more data packages, because they'll know like, hey, I need this data package for this data package for that, and that for that, instead of just buying regular data that will just have access to all sites. So for example, we have these two common data bundles for mobiles, and it's weird that they exist, but they do. You pay $1, you have access to WhatsApp plus Twitter. That's what the bundle is called. It's the $1 WhatsApp plus Twitter weekly bundle. It only lasts you 1 week. The $3 variant is the one that lasts you the whole month. But I'm going to be talking about the weekly ones because they're the most common ones. You pay $1 only to have access to WhatsApp and Twitter. WhatsApp, you are only allocated 90 megabytes of data. And Twitter, I believe you also get its own 90 megabytes of data separately. But for $1, you can only access those two. We have a second bundle that's also very popular, especially amongst the girls. We have the $1 Facebook plus Instagram. I personally don't subscribe to this data bundle, so I can't be sure what the current allocations of data are. That I would be lying, totally lying. I do not subscribe to it. I haven't been on Facebook for years, and I have never made an Instagram account, so hey, the benefits of being ugly, I guess. But the difference in data allocations, why is it that we're paying $1 there or $1 there, but then the allocations of data are different? The WhatsApp data is not the same as the Facebook data. The Twitter data is not the same as the Instagram, and all three. WhatsApp isn't the same as Instagram. Twitter ain't the same as Facebook. Why am I separating data allocations if I'm paying the same amount of money for each? Why shouldn't I just get the maximum amount? If for example, the WhatsApp, if the Facebook data one for a week is 200 megabytes, why is it that if I spend the exact same amount of money on WhatsApp, I'm getting less data? Why? Why exactly? Why? To limit communications? What is it for? To limit video content being immediately taken out, because there are certain situations where there's corruption caught live on camera and people immediately make it go viral on WhatsApp because everyone has WhatsApp. Are we limiting that? Freedom of speech? People talking behind the government's back? What exactly is going on? Why is it that the same amount of data is giving me, the same amount of money is giving me different amounts of data on different services? Especially the fact that the popular one, which is WhatsApp, is the one with the least amount of data allocated for that same amount of money. Why? I don't know. There are local situations whereby ISPs will increase your data consumption using forged packets. I'm victim to this, just so you know. When a limited data plan is used, when you pay for a limited data plan, so they use this to promote their quote-unquote unlimited data plans, their options. But even then, even by doing so, those unlimited data plans, you will experience throttling, packet shaping, to slow down your connection on peer-to-peer sites. I don't know. Maybe someone who's more well-versed, someone who's worked in the telecoms communication industry can explain to me why this happens. You'll have situations whereby there's one particular data bundle, you pay $25 US, you get 30 gigs of data per month. I thought, okay, let me try this out. That 30 gigs finished within 6 days. Nothing was downloaded. My Windows 10 updates were disabled completely. I went to inquire as to how 30 gigs could finish in 6 days with no downloads active. I was told, maybe you were watching YouTube, stay away from that site because it consumes data. I was hardly watching YouTube. At most, I could say I spent about 4 hours to about 7 hours of those 6 days on YouTube, because I would just watch videos before I fell asleep. During the day, I would be out. So where exactly did my data go? I was like, okay, fine. Maybe it was YouTube. Could you please print me out a list of the data I used per day, which sites consumed which data, etc. Nothing specific, nothing that breaks the law. I just want to see my data consumption. No, sorry, sir, we are not allowed to do that. Now my question is, why exactly aren't you allowed to show me my data consumption per month, per day, or per hour? Probably because forged packets were used by them to completely wipe out your data, to finish your data. Even in mobile service providers do the exact same thing. Those 1 gig or 2 gig data bundles are actually about 800 megabytes and 1.5 gigs. They're not actually the complete thing. That they have their own roaming charges that just eat most of the data before you even use it. Is the internet fair? I think not. I genuinely think not. There is no transparency within the situation. The charging, or should I say, let's see. There was once a time where you had access to NAT type 2 communications within your internet connections, and you could apply for NAT type 1. Then there was some protesting that happened. There were some words that were said at the time. I won't get into details. And all of a sudden, every service provider, internet service provider, is now issuing internet at NAT type 3 irreversible. You are stuck unless you have a connection or you are some business. Why is that so? Why don't you want people communicating? Because you have to understand that only people with NAT type 3 connections can communicate with people with NAT type 3 connections. So the rest of the world that's enjoying their NAT type 2 and their NAT type 1, they can't hear us. If your applications, if your games, like example, this is for gamers, if you're using voice over IP in game trying to communicate with your team, you can't hear them, they can't hear you. At best, the NAT type 3 means that maybe you can hear them, they can't hear you. You can't communicate to them because they're at a better NAT type than you. They're at 2 or maybe even 1. You can't communicate online, video games, voice over IP, Skype, Steam, whatever, you name it, Discord. You might be lucky if it even works. Why was this change made? It was never explained to the general public. It was just a thing that happened. Most people who were illiterate as to these things had friends also like, hey man, you know, the internet has upgraded. We went from NAT 2 to NAT 3. 3 is a bigger number than 2. Someone think that things are better. You were at level 2, now you're at level 3. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping people answer these questions. I'm just putting them out there for people to educate me on the situation. And then back to the issue of data bundles, right? $1. This is back to the expense. It's fucking expensive. Listen to this. $1 United States dollar gives you 250 megabytes of data per day. 24 hours. It only lasts 24 hours. That same $1, if you want your data to last a week, will only give you $1 will only give you 35 megabytes per week. And then if you want that data to last a month, $1 will only give you 25 megabytes of data per month. Why does the value of the dollar, why is that $1 that stays the same giving me different amounts of data just on time? If I've been already allocated $1 worth of data, I've already been allocated $1 worth of data. That 250 MB doesn't really have to expire in 24 hours. The reason why it does is probably because they want to allocate that bandwidth to someone else as fast as they can, which means they keep on selling it more often, turning a higher profit instead of just allocating me my 250 MB and letting me consume it at the pace that I want to consume it, or at least within a month's period. It's as if people don't realize just the benefit of having good internet in a country is you could actually let businesses thrive online, but I guess Strive doesn't understand, quote unquote. In this country, in the end of the day, I just summarize that internet is not a utility. It isn't a utility, it's a luxury. People want to make sure it stays that way too. If it were a utility, everyone would have access to it. You'd opt out if you don't want it, but in this case you really have to try hard to opt in, and even when you do, you are being swindled for the prices that they're giving you. It's not right. It's never has been, ever since 2009. It hasn't changed. It's affecting everyone, including us gamers, and sadly, as it stands, there's nothing much we can do. The people are sanctioning mobile data. There was a time when people were trying to sanction mobile data, putting limits on WhatsApp, putting limits on Facebook. Warnings were being thrown out that, hey, if you're caught saying certain things in certain places, we can't guarantee your safety. What happened to freedom of speech? We're on the internet. Why is the internet being regulated? I don't know. I can't say. But clearly, it's not in our favor. Just know that it might be in terms of the political agenda. One day this happens, next thing you know, we're paying for it. And the internet is pushed down in results of that thing happening just to further whatever political agenda is at play. Internet censorship, like I was talking about in Turkey and Facebook, luckily enough isn't a thing yet, but I feel that it could be a thing in the future. You never know. The maintenance of faulty networks is never ever addressed. It's always the consumer's fault. Oh, the systems went down. We're sorry. Can we please have a discount? No. Can we have a refund? No. What should we do? It's either you pay for the next month or go find another ISP. Even if you do, they might not even care. It's as if net neutrality is a joke. it's not a thing. It's not a thing. But there was a green paper in 2016, signed in South Africa, acknowledging that net neutrality is a thing that we could consider. You know, it's a thing that should be addressed. It wasn't addressed. It's now 2018. I don't think any developments of that green paper ever happened, but at least it was considered as a thing. First steps, baby steps. Baby steps. Small baby steps, like microscopic germ baby steps. But at least it's something. It's something. And proponents of net neutrality argue that it will foster free speech. Does the country want free speech though? That's my question. do we really, most countries in Africa within the current political situations, do they really want free speech? Even though people say that net neutrality will bring about free speech, which is a positive thing. Do they want it though? Information on past crimes, past events that maybe people don't want to be shared will be exposed. Do they want them to be exposed? I don't know. But that is my talk for today. Those of you who are still awake, who are never bored to sleep, thank you for listening. I hope you do enjoy your Valentine's Day. I hope this one-on-one session we had was a decent one. But today was the episode for February 2018 of the Spiral Arrow podcast, tackling issues that affect the gamer and the regular citizen on internet expenses, and net neutrality, and the national budget, using Zimbabwe as a case study. I would like to hear what you have to say in the comments below, and please, any criticism, if it's constructive, is welcome. I'll see you next month, and hope you enjoy the tournament videos that we also put up, Street Fighter and Marvel. I really enjoyed doing this for you guys. I wish I could do more, but currently not in my power. Talk to you soon.